Welcome to Workplace Whispers with Dr. Olufemi Ogunlowo, where we tackle the bold and often uncomfortable questions shaping leadership, business, and human capital. Well, Dr. Ogunlowo is a seasoned HR expert and CEO of Strategic Outsourcing Limited with decades of hands-on experience transforming the workforce and performance. Now, on this episode, we have a very exciting topic for you. We're pulling back the curtain on leadership development, and we're asking a very tough question. Are leadership programs actually building real leaders or just creating feel-good moments? Now, no doubt, we are in an era flooded with workshops, boot camps, and masterclasses. But the question is, how do we separate performance-driven growth from leadership entertainment? Now, joining us today on Workplace Whispers is Mr. Benga Owolabi, an entrepreneur, business strategist, and leadership development expert whose work is changing the way organizations think about building capability that lasts. I'm Praise Mba, and this is Workplace Whispers.
Thank you, Praise, for that warm introduction.
Thank
and
you very
welcome,
much.
Benga.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure he knows working with Femi, being a doctor. Maybe I should also be.
We can just confirm one on you right away.
Absolutely. Thanks a
Great.
lot.
So maybe I was seeing, hindsight,
Sure.
future. You've heard that already, the questions for today, but we'll distill them for the purpose of this conversation. The big question here, I'll start with the first one, 3. Do most leadership programs genuinely build capability or simply create feel-good moments?
Okay, so maybe we should start from what we used to know, management development program, right? Many organizations, especially in the back in the days, had management development programs that were well orchestrated and choreographed to develop future leaders into their organizations. The question we would ask is, how many people truly made it to the top, from those programs? And were those programs also done to the benefit of the staff or just for the purpose of the organization? And what would be your take on that?
So the interesting thing is, for everything that organizations do, there's always a reason behind it. So the conception of that program in itself is on the basis of what is their need. We'll all know that the Industrial Revolution brought about mass production, manufacturing, and therefore the whole concept of division of labor, organizational design, and all the public schools that were in existence were not really churning out people specifically for workplace requirements. So yes, you have gotten the skills, you have the know-how, you have some information, but how do you translate that into the actual work that is required in an organization? And that's how a lot of these management programs came about. And I would say to a large extent, yes, not everybody that goes through it ends up being a leader. And that's the entire purpose. It's to actually weed out at what level you can operate. Again, leadership is at all levels of an organization. So being at the topmost does not make you the only leader. Leadership itself is going to be stratified across the whole organization. So it begins to sort of identify your capability, right? And at what level can you maximize that potential you have? So I would say yes, they did do some level of impact on the organization. And those who emerge do
but
emerge.
Then if we look back, right, and look at family businesses and look at businesses also that are not large and listed and all of that, can we truly say that Nigerian businesses have prepared future leaders and businesses have transcended one generation, in this market? Sure. Can we say that?
Very few, very, very few. And which comes back to that whole debate around, how can you transfer these leadership skills and the business skills into someone? It's got to be very practical, right? The whole concept of apprenticeship, right, versus classroom. Then there's a debate. How practical or how theoretical is it? So I would say, to a large extent, a lot of family businesses have not been able to get that right and transition. One, either for generational gap, some of the children that are supposed to be successors are also not patient enough to understudy, or the people feel, okay, you learn from somewhere else and then later come in, but then they find that there's a different culture from the way the family itself has set up their own organization to
Could
run.
it simply be that there is no deliberate, or intentional approach or effort, because a lot of times you see, just send the child abroad, and then after a few years comes back, and then it becomes executive director without content, even hands-on experience or knowledge of the business itself. But if you look at other climes, you find out that the child, even from secondary school, begins to go into that business, does internship, understands it, begins to not only have managerial experience, but workshop experience. And so you could say that's a deliberate program. Do we have that culture of being intentional about building the future leaders in family business, even beyond the business? Do we even build the children up to be leaders to start with?
So again, I think when you look at that, it's a sort of challenge or bane of our society. There's been that transition. If we continued with our own culture, possibly those gaps may not have inherently showed up. But again, we had the Western culture sort of imposed upon us. Our great-grandfathers, it does. Okay, so what I'm saying is, when you look at the practice of our own traditional culture and the Western culture, there could be a clash.
I even think our own traditional culture disadvantages intentional building of skills. And why do I say so? Because you then have that notion that the first child, the first son, is automatically the leader, and not necessarily the child that demonstrates the capability, the competence, and all the things that are required for leadership.
Well, I mean, yeah, so to an extent, but over time things tend to change, right? People will realize that it is not always the same, right? It's not always the theory that works out the way. So I would say to you that even for the countries that have evolved, they have probably had longer years of evolution. India, 4,000 years of continuous civilization. China, 4,000 years of continuous civilization. The United Kingdom, United States. So when we talk about Africa, again, there's been that sort of, like I said.
So if you look at it that way, right, we might feel that, indeed, it's a short time. But we are talking about humanity race, right?
True.
And so if we, like before we came on here, right, we were talking about, was there a beginning?
Correct.
So if there was a beginning, that beginning would be the same for everybody. Exactly. So it doesn't matter whether it's 4,000 years.
It's pace.
Exactly.
It's about your pace. It's about your pace. It's about your approach. It's also about your own familiarity with what it is that you are evolving, as opposed to suddenly imbibing something
that is strange. So are we culturally disadvantaged from showing leadership or training people to be leaders? Is that the point?
No, what I'm saying is, so if you look at that sort of mix of different expectation, the curriculum for the Western world, it's been developed, it's evolved. Now, for most parents who send their children out there, they thought that they were doing something positive, and by the time the children are coming back, taking them through that, again, ground up apprenticeship, getting to understudy, that to them would seem like a demotion. Meanwhile, if they had allowed the children to do that at the time of their progressing, at the time of their growth, that would have helped. But again, they thought, let's put them out into the Western world. So I'm saying that sort of dichotomy of expectation created a gap, right? And once that gap is in existence, then to get the children to come in and build that organization to a next level, it becomes a very difficult thing. And
so
again, even disconnected exactly from their roots and from their reality.
Because traditionally, right, it was through apprenticeship that things were passed down.
Absolutely. So, whether you're a drummer, whether you're an artist, whether you're in the textile. So that's why I said we had our own culture.
Exactly. Get to become a leader in the future.
So there's that hands-on apprenticeship, supposedly different from the theoretical classroom. So the moment you're exposed to theoretical classroom, which has its own influence, but without the hands-on, you're not going to get the right kind of leadership.
Bring that back to help steer businesses in the way of getting the future, secure.
In design programs today, people are becoming very conscious that it's got to be very practical, it's got to be very experiential, and it's got to involve near real situations. You want to put people into actual circumstances and situations that they can try out their hands and how would they react or make a decision. At least things that will not be costly for the business at that point. So you simulate, you create case studies, you create situations that they can work with either in terms of practice or in terms of pilot projects, things that are smaller. So organizations are beginning to learn that those are the kind of things you put people through, which is why I like that question that said, look, is this supposedly something that is being done in a way to sort of mask the management deficiencies? Because in the real sense of it, management is about leading people, it's about managing resources, it's about helping people to grow. You can't take that away and just say, go to a development program. No, development program should be in itself fused with the day-to-day management practice and requirements.
The development program cannot be in a silo.
It cannot be in a silo, absolutely.
Yeah, it must be an integral part of the business.
Absolutely. I mean,
And
for organizations
so why
where
do we also
worked,
create that dichotomy though? Because you bring in a bunch of fresh graduates, right, and then put them on a track and you call it the development program. Meanwhile, there were graduates, right, within the system prior to that time. Does that create a us versus them, kind of situation where there might not even be cooperation between those two sides?
Yeah,
because
sure.
they see that,
So
okay,
one of
these
the
guys
things I
are
would
coming
say,
in to
you
take
see, when you
the...
talk about leadership programs or even management programs, there's the mindset and there's the practical skills, right? And the two working hand in hand. What is a leader? Someone who envisions, someone who can motivate, someone who can communicate, someone who can dimension problems. So there's a lot of mindset involvement in leadership. Aside of the physical or practical skills, analytical skills, whatever else that are physical skills that you have to deal with, financial modeling and stuff like that. So when you then look at that, so the whole concept of bringing people aside sometimes is from that mindset perspective that
But
people
why
have
they
different
not
orientation.
look inwards, right, and identify those candidates from the current crop? Unless you have a vote of no confidence on the existing crop of staff, then you go out there and bring in fresh bloods to infuse. But a program that is designed to bring in outsiders to aspire for leadership, ignoring those who are on the inside, it's more likely going to have impediments on its way.
Well, I agree with you, without a doubt. I think so. At the end of the day, what you should look at is the selection criteria. Most organizations having those programs is not a bad thing. Bringing in people into those programs from outside is also not a bad thing, but then that should not be to the exclusion of those who are already within. So it then becomes what is the criteria for selection? What is the criteria for you identifying?
9 out of 10 times. I don't want to say 10 out of 10.
Sure.
I don't have any statistics for that. But often, MDPs are designed to bring in people, and not necessarily to harness, those who are already there.
True. Again, let me just sort of end up with this. Because leadership is also sometimes about change, right? People have that perception that when someone has been in an organization for quite a while and you've imbibed that which you want to change, then the question becomes, can the same mindset that has been within its existing environment be able to step out and induce the change that you want to create even in that environment?
Yeah, but those who are coming in will eventually also become dinosaurs.
Yeah,
right?
so then there'll be another change into the future.
You've very danced around the second question, which is about the criteria for selection. Okay. Should it be about potential now, or should it be about potential? You see them and you see their potentials to lead, potentials to do better, or should it be about performance when choosing for these leadership programs, like we said earlier?
So there's a concept. So let me throw up 3 words. You've talked about potential, performance, promotion, right? Those are 3 P's. Yeah. Potential talks about your ability, what you can do. How do we harness it? How do we bring it out? How do we identify that you have that potential, right? Performance talks about the results you've achieved, what you can deliver, what we can see in line with the goals and the objective of the organization. Promotion talks more towards the future. What do we expect to achieve in the future? Now, there's a saying that promotion is not in itself a reward for current performance. Many people have been promoted to fail, meaning that in that promotion, they didn't have the potential required for that next level, right? So it's a combination of all those 3 things that when you look at leadership, when you look at selection, potential plays a lot of role because you're seeing in someone certain inherent capabilities that can be developed. For some other people, it may be there, but they are already maxing it out. They are already in a state where, yes, it is showing in their current performance, but the ability to see that they can perform beyond that current level to a higher level is not there.
So
As a result of
promotion
the
is not a
potential gap.
reward.
It's not a reward.
Absolutely.
It's not a
A
reward.
lot of times, people take promotion to be a reward. Because a reward is gratification
It's an
for that
assessment
sake.
of your next level of performance.
Absolutely. But a lot of times, promotion has been used as a reward for
No.
current performance,
Oh, yeah,
where
sure.
there is no content to drive future performance. And now there are roles where someone is supposedly stagnating, right? Because they don't have the capacity to move up. Now, the fear of moving them out, which is the natural thing to do, because it should be up or out. If you don't have the up or out approach, then you're going to have a situation where you are promoting people which is up, but they are not capable of driving the performance. So you have the promotion, you do not have the performance, and there is no further potential. And then that means that the organization is imperiling itself, because at the end of the day, if those 3 P's are not aligned, everybody that earns a promotion must have a potential to perform at the level they have been placed. So promotion is not a reward for current performance. Promotion is an acknowledgement of potential for future performance.
So when you look at, again, some of the buzzwords today we hear as a result of COVID, right? And even the way the world has changed significantly, AI, technology, and what we're talking about, we say you need to unlearn, you need to relearn, and you need to keep learning. Now, one of the things about leadership is the ability to rewire yourself, get yourself ready for the next level. Things are always going to change. So it is understanding what are the things that you should look out for in a person that shows the potential of that person to the future. Is this person adaptive? Can this person be pragmatic? Can this person learn? Is he rewirable? What are the behaviors you are seeing that this person can adopt and embrace? Even when you look at generational gaps, in the organization today, we have about 4 or 5 generations working in the workforce, right? Why are there frictions between the baby boomers, Gen Z, Gen X, and all of the rest of them, Gen Y, and then the millennials? It's all about the perception of the environment, their responsiveness, what they've been built to embrace. My children today, or my grandchildren today, they are all being embraced into technology from scratch, AI from scratch. Right? We're talking about us outsourcing our human brain and all of that to technology as opposed to writing. So when you find such things, right, who are those that have those potentials to still be relevant, right, to still have capacity to perform at that level? That's what development programs, leadership should look out for. And you have to, in a way, put people in situations that will find out whether they have those potentials and abilities.
So in direct response to your question, it's truly a combination of both, because you are asking whether it is for performance or for potential. It's your current performance shows that you are able to deliver today. So we take that off for you, but we can't promote you on that, because why should we promote you on the stage where you are at? We only promote you because you demonstrate that you have more in you to perform at a higher level. Now, it's of course, we can't even think of promoting someone that's not performing at the current level. So it means that if you are not performing at the current level, we should help you to perform at that level. Now, if we put in all that we can to get you to perform at that level and you still can't, the right thing to do in the interest of both organizations is to help you find the space where you can then perform. And that should be outside or somewhere else, And any organization that cannot be bold to make that kind of decision, we end up having a situation where you have a population that cannot perform.
I'm trying to. There's this saying that we say the reward for more work of hard work is more work. So I'm trying to put in vis-a-vis promotion. Is this the same thing here?
In a sense,
promotion has never been a reward for current work. Promotion has always been stepping up to future work, and that's why I said people can be promoted to fail. because you're promoted to a higher level, but you can't deliver. Then from being a star, you've seen superstars becoming, bad actors or performers. Why? Because the level at which they were performing as superstars was their peak, optimum performance level. Now, without evaluating them to see if they have the capacity for more, you put them to deliver on more, and then they cannot deliver on more. But the assessment criteria has been raised. Even though they are still performing at the level they were performing when they were superstar. It's like somebody running 100 meters in secondary school, and he was doing 11 seconds. I'm like, great guy. But don't forget that, world champions run it at 9 point something seconds.
By the time I get into university,
exactly.
Becoming an adult, if you can't go,
so you can't push sub 10,
correct,
then you can't enter into that super performance mode.
Controversial. If we bring this to national discourse, right? Again, there's that question around who is fit to be a president of the country, right? Being a governor does not qualify you. And why do we always say that? Because at the state level, which is subnational, the requirements there are slightly different from being a president. In the president, you are the one envisioning for your country in the world. We're competing against other countries, trying to attract investment and resources. There's military decisions to be made, defense of the sovereignty of the country. There's foreign relations to be done. There's international trade to be engaged. Meanwhile, in subnationals, that's very different. So you can be a very good governor, right? And you did very well, development plan, but you may not be the best president, particularly in a place like Nigeria, where we're also multi-ethnic, multi-religious. There are different dynamics that play at a national level. So if you don't have that potential to elevate your capability from being a governor to that level, you will fail. So these are questions, and so selecting people, identifying leaders, there are things that you have to look out for that make up those potentials. And like I've said, what's a leader about? It's about envisioning. It's about helping people to see a future that has not yet existed. It's about motivating people towards that goal, right? It's about communicating it, and marshalling everybody in line with that. So when you look at global leaders that have done things in whatever field, whether political, government, or whatever, you will see that these are the kind of things they have. So those leadership skills have been sort of disaggregated. And like I said, it's a combination of mind and practical skills.
So why should that medium-scale enterprises, entrepreneur out there think that this is relevant to him or her?
Sure, it is. One, you want your business to grow, or two, you want your business to succeed your lifetime. And one of the things...
Is that an assumption?
Well, again...
Exactly.
for many businesses, unfortunately, they exist to the lifestyle
of the entrepreneur. So should we just say subsistence business?
Correct.
And not businesses intended to last?
That's true.
So
and that has been, again, historical. Life has been subsistent. You feed for your family, and that's it. You're okay. But when you have excess, you have more capacity, you can then sell to the public or whoever else.
The funniest thing is that whereas we talk about businesses not going from first to second or third generation, or not growing from small to big. Okay, so let's even leave size, but let's look at transitioning. Right. You'll find out that sometimes you go to Okeani or Balogun, and then you find out that is a third generation person running that store. And you see that at that level. Yeah, sure. But you don't get to see it in the organized private sector.
For those that you find that such things happen, you will see that the children or grandchildren have been involved from early stages.
Absolutely.
After school, they come around. There's an environment that was created. There's a place of interest, right? They find value.
So culturally, we can do it.
Which is why I was saying that
but
it is
why
when
are
we
also disconnected when it comes to corporate, organized private sector.
So in a large sense, I think we're getting it. I mean, we were disconnected at historically, but I think we're getting it now. Like I said, as long as it can be practical.
You can name 10
organizations today.
Well,
without wanting to speak up for organizations, absolutely. Again, even when you go to government, you find that in some government spaces, they are creating leadership academies. They're working with the private sector to establish them. I know a major former bank owner who is driving public sector reforms, and leadership, one of the things that they are doing. I know in Lagos State, one of the pioneering states at the beacon of development, they also have a leadership development. And I also know in Edo State, they've institutionalized things like that. So a lot of states are also recognizing that they have to infuse those sort of programs that will combine the theory and the mind, but also with the practical. And I even know that for some of these organizations, they are reaching out to African countries because, again, exposing people to different environments, different dynamics allows them to begin to get a sense of what does it mean to manage public resources and stuff like that. So that's why I said, even if we cannot put so many of them on the watch list, a few are making a good impact.
Our third question here, the top three that we had today, one of them was leadership, leadership programs and all of that. And is this a distraction from poor management practices from the leaders themselves?
For the fact that you can identify that those programs should exist, that in itself is a commendable practice. It's a management practice, because what you're saying is there are gaps, and you're looking for how to fill those gaps, how to bring in fresh people, and how to ensure that your organization is able to be sustainable and survive. So I wouldn't say they are programs that are masking poor management practices, but they cannot replace management practice. At the end of the day, leadership is something that is transferred. It's something that you coach and you mentor and you apprentice the next generation. There's got to be that contact. And the reason I'm saying that is that is where you are able to really, truly identify the innate potentials in people. Yes, there are designed psychological assessment questions that have been, again, based on research, used to find how you can use those things. But again, people can game some of those methodologies, really, at the end of the day. But there's nothing as more real as working with someone and being able to, and then it's not a decision of just one person, right? Again, there'll be a multiplicity of individuals that will be exposed to that person, and then there's that kind of 360-degree feedback and collective assessment that, oh yes, this person has the potential. So I would say that it cannot be to mask. If anybody thinks that by having those practices or those sort of leadership programs, therefore, you can use them as a way to project your organization and your practices are not yet up to scale world class, it will fail. Yeah. It's a combination of both.
And I think for me, the issue is truly even about how do we get business owners to consciously plan to build leaders? Because a lot of times, business owners are afraid of building strong leaders around them. I mean, you could argue multiple reasons why that could be so, but at the end of the day, not building leaders limits the organization itself. Because the situation where what you have is everybody that says yes to you, because you've truly not empowered people, to grow up to be leaders within the organization, means that eventually there will be no one at the helms of affairs. And so the big question out there is, what are you doing as a business owner to deliberately grow the next generation of leaders in your organization? Whether they are your children or they are not, it's irrelevant. The question is, are you going to have a business after you, or the demise of the business is going to be at your exit?
I want to bring up this point. Sorry I know you want to say something. And we probably haven't said it so far in our conversation. Leadership is selflessness, right? So any small business owner, any small entrepreneur, public servant, whatever they are, if you think what you have is about yourself, right, then you will have that fear of raising other leaders around you. Many people have businesses, they just got into it and it is funding their lifestyle. It's helping them live the dream that they desire. But there's nothing you have, whether it's a business, whether it's an organization, anything. It is society. It is the environment that has made it available to you. Mm-hmm. So it behoves you to see beyond yourself and to ask, how will the society profit and benefit from what is in my hands? Making sure that thing does not die, it grows beyond you is important, institutionalizing it. Then you now begin to see the need for leaders to be around you, because it is more than what you alone can do.
Yeah. Well, I want to say a big thank you to you for coming all the way. Our studio is quite far in Lagos, but thank you so much.
It's an interesting conversation. Thank you for having me, Femi, and well done for what you're doing. Workplace Whispers, I like it.
Thank you.
And I'll surely always make myself available when called upon. I'm marketing myself already.
Okay, well, I think that's a good place to keep it. Thank you so much for being a part of Workplace Whispers. Look forward to our next episode and make sure you like and subscribe so more people get to see this video. It's at SOL Nigeria on YouTube. Until next time.